Chris, Chris, I'll knock them off there, and then I'll be buying a pair of glasses, and you know, we're going to Joshua chapter 1. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you in all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead this people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Praise you, Lord. I thank you, Father. Thank you for the word. This is this this is such a powerful moment here. As you know, Moses has passed away, and when you think about it, when Moses passes away, what a moment! I mean, they've only known Moses as their leader. They've only known Moses as the one to lead the way. Aaron and is gone, and Moses here, he's the one that's been leading them. He was the one that rose up in Egypt. He's the one that said, "Hey, get on my coattail. We're going out of here." They watched God work miracle after miracle through Moses, and so what a moment that you would just think, the thing that you've looked to for your answer, and the only one they don't know how to draw to God themselves. Moses has set that example. Moses has led by example, and they don't know how to do that, and so they could just quit in this moment. But God said, I'm not done. I'm not done. I'm going to give you someone else. And he calls up Joshua, and it says the promise I promised to Moses, I'm going to give you. See, because the promise wasn't dependent on Moses. Oh, come on, glory. The promise for you is not dependent on me. The promise for this church is not dependent on me. The promise for this community is not dependent on me. The promise for this world, the end time revival, is not dependent on me. The promise of Jesus' coming is not dependent on me, is it? It's all dependent on the Lord. And he wills and calls those he chooses. And in this moment, he's calling Joshua. Because there's something in Joshua, and God has said there's something in you that I desire to pull out of you, because it's in you that I created you to be, and if I pull it out of you, then you'll walk in who you're supposed to be. I preached a couple weeks ago, and I was talking about who you are in Christ, and I walked away feeling like I left a lot of empty holes, and I missed a lot of things, and the Lord said, I understand some people need to know who they are in this day and time. They need to understand the capabilities they have, where they can walk in, or how they can draw to me, where they need to draw. They need to grasp this. And when you see Joshua, it says Joshua, it starts off Moses, the servant of God, is what? He's dead. Moses is the servant of God. That's his title. He's the servant of God. And it goes, and God spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' aide. Now that word aide, I think the King James uses minister. It means one that serves. He served. He was a servant of Moses, making him what? A servant of God. Right? He was just, he didn't change from who he was. He was a servant from the beginning, and he's a servant now. His position just elevates more, but he's still the same man he was. Get this. When you think about the church as a whole, when you think about the bridge, and I don't know if Bob was there when it started and Suzanne, but Jeff Alcorn, it laid it on his heart. He started a church. He laid a foundation. He was the Moses of the bridge. Called him to do something. He was obedient to it, and he began to walk in it. And it's whoever, and I don't know who it was, that started the Living Word years ago. There was something laid on their heart that God said instilled in them. They was the Moses of the Living Word. Then those that followed behind, there was some that were their aides, but they were no less. They were no less of a child or a servant of God than the one they called that instilled it, was it? Brother Zahn was there, was he not, when the bridge started? And he got what? Elevated to that position. His position moved, but he was always a servant of God. And his job was to build upon, to watch and see the promise through. Because the promise didn't stop. Because Moses, he got a glimpse of the promise, but he didn't get to enter the promise. Abraham, he got a glimpse of the promise, but he didn't enter the promise. He's still seeing it from heaven. The children of Israel, they ain't walked in the promise of the Messiah yet, have they? But they will. It's those that are on high today, they're getting a glimpse of it and seeing the chosen nation come to know God. And they'll be sealed and marked, but they haven't saw that through, but it's still a promise of God. It's not dependent on the man. But it takes somebody knowing who they are and walking in who they are to have the capability to serve God. To be able to walk up, you don't just become Joshua or Moses by not knowing who you are. You've got to understand. You know, we pick on Moses, do we not? But Moses, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but Moses understood something. He knew where he fell short, did he not? He knew where he couldn't do it. He knew that. He understood that. And before I get too far ahead of myself, one of the things and the misconceptions about the world is they don't like that term servant, do they? They don't like that term servant. They think, well, I'm not serving nobody. It's tough. But see, we miss it. The Old Testament saints, it was an honor to get to serve God. When you got called or you walked in the ministry, it was an honor. It was a privilege. And we see this when Jesus comes, do we not? Because the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and the scribes, they didn't think the apostles were worthy of the Messiah. They didn't think they were worthy to serve God. They wouldn't reckon to a word that God said through them or done. It didn't matter what miracle God. Why? They felt they were untrained, unskilled. They were unworthy. They were nothing but unknowledgeable fishermen. They didn't see him as nothing more. That's who they labeled him as. I told you this, that you can't let the world label you into what you are, and that's what we do day after day. Oh, Lord, ain't it amazing how we speak out of both sides of our mouths in this world? We don't want to label nobody, but we put them in a box nonetheless. We fit them in a box. Speaking out of both sides of our mouths. And when God says, I made you uniquely you are you, and when you find out who you are, then you understand this. But see, they did not feel that they were worthy to serve God. The apostles ain't worthy. And Jesus told them this in John 15, verse 14. He says, you're my friends if you do what I command. Now, what's that word command mean? Most of us don't get it. It means to follow what I say. To follow what I say. So if I tell you something, you follow it. You follow after what I say. If I give you a command, the army will they not? They command their soldiers to go out into battle. And if they don't, then something, they're not going to be good, is it? There's a command from the commanding officer, and he says, go. He says, I call you friends if you do what I command. So in other words, if I tell you, you move in it, you do what I command. I call you friends because I no longer call you what? I no longer call you servants. You're in a serving capacity, but that's not what I no longer call you. I call you because a servant does not know his master's business. He's telling him this. He's saying, when you serve, when you do as I tell you, you understand what I'm trying to do in your life. Glory. You understand what I'm trying to do in your life. Look. It's just like this. What you tell your kid, it's the easiest analogy out there. Don't touch a hot stove. What are you doing? I'm doing it for their benefit. I gave them a command. Now, are they obedient it? Probably not. They probably touch a hot stove, right, Mom? Once or twice, maybe. I don't know. I didn't learn the first time. Because the servant does not know his master's business. They understand that the master, what they send forth, what the master, the commander, has sent forth is going to be beneficial to the one that is taking the order. They understand that. They comprehend that. They get it through their head. That Jesus ain't telling me this, a bunch of lists and do's and don'ts, and tell me not to do this because he wants me to fall and wants me to be submissive and wants me to serve him. No, I understand he tells me this because it's beneficial to my life. It's beneficial to me. When we start talking about strength in just a moment, I understand when I submit myself to the Lord, then he renews my strength. How many gets tired? I am worn out. I've reached some points here in the last year and a half. I am just exhausted mentally, physically, and spiritually. And he says this. He says, when you submit to me, when you draw to me and wait on me, then I'll renew your strength, right? There's something to be had in it. I understand that. You don't know if you know the Father's business, because if you don't, you're nothing but a servant. Did you know you can serve God and not be called a friend? He goes, instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I have learned from my Father I have made known to you. Did you know that you can be in a place, that you're just a servant of God and you're not a friend of God? The Sadducees and Pharisees were serving God day and night in the temple. Is that not what it said? But they weren't his friends. They didn't know him when he walked through the door, did they? There's pastors today that they serve God day and night. They're probably better preachers than me, and they serve him and serve him. There's worship leaders that serve him, but they're not friends of God. Oh, Lord help me. There's musicians, there's people that cook, people that clean, people that mow the yard. There's people all over that serve God day and night, and they're not gotten deeper in with God. They're not become friends of God because they don't understand what they're doing. They don't understand that. They think it. Look, there's a religious mind that comes over individuals that thinks that I've got to do this or that to be in right accordance with God. What does it take to be in right accordance with God? It's accept Jesus Christ as your Savior and to obey everything he what? Commands. That's it. All the days of your life. See, this is honestly why so many of the church that they know Christ, have accepted Christ, but they never grow in it. Because they never go deeper with God. They never go in. I talked about weeks ago about entering in. They're still standing outside saying, how can I get in that door? And he says, knock and you'll find it open. Knock and it shall. Is that not what he says? And he says, come in and I'll sup with you. It's this that many of the church don't understand and don't get. And so he says, because you did not choose me. How many knows you didn't choose God? He said, no man cometh to the Father unless the Spirit draws him. Unless the Father draws them. That's what the Word says, but he does it through his Spirit, so we quote it that way. But he says, you did not choose me. I chose you and appointed you. How many's appointed in here? Every hand should be up here. You're appointed. God chose you and appointed you. He didn't give birth into you and breathe life into you without no purpose in mind. I mean, I'm not the only good-looking guy in here. I look pretty good. See, George says he is. Half the people ain't with me this morning. There we go. Somebody at least laugh, giggle, something. Come on. Look, God didn't just appoint me. God didn't just appoint, He appointed you specifically for you. He said, I've got a plan for you. He didn't, when He had Moses, Moses brought the people so far. And He said, now when Moses does what Moses is supposed to do, I will bring up the next one because I appointed him for that. It didn't belittle Joshua's past. It didn't belittle Joshua where he came from. Joshua was the same always, but now his position just grows as he goes deeper with God, because now he goes in deeper and he understands this. I appointed you so that you might go and do what? Bear fruit. Bear fruit. Fruit that will last. Oh, Lord, help me, because there's so many that don't bear fruit. What is fruit? Galatians 5:20 tells us, does not? Love, joy, peace. And against all these there is what? No law. Love, let's not even get into the ones that expressed. Let's just get on love. How about just love? Being loved and loving. Being loved. I mean, how many of the church walks in love daily? A lot don't. A lot don't. How many walk in joy? Look at this. It says fruit, go and bear fruit. It's not walk in joy today, but to bear fruit that will last. Fruit that, it's a whole different thing to go and have your apple this afternoon, fresh off the fruit tree, and have apples so much that you're just eating them so much that well, you get sick of seeing apples. I get sick of walking around with joy in my heart. Anybody ever said that? I guarantee not. I get sick and tired of having so much peace. I wake up I go to bed with so much peace. I get sick of it. I just lay in my bed. I don't think about nothing. I just think about the goodness of God. Man, that's what it was, peace. Most of us don't, do we? And Jesus tells us this. He says, I don't even call you friends. I call you what? Sons and daughters of God. He says, I'm going to even go deeper with you, because as sons and daughters of God, we don't just see the fruit, but we partake of the fruit. We partake of everything that's His. We partake of everything that He puts out. I mean, my kids, when they walk in the house, they don't knock at the door. I mean, I've told Skylar she needs to, because, you know. But anyway, you don't. They walk in there. She walks in, opens up my fridge, and starts taking out my leftovers. That was my dinner for this afternoon. Come on. They just think it's theirs, right? They come in. You don't, Brother Chris, you don't tell Nevaeh, hey, don't be eating all my food. You should just go there and eat, or drink all your Mountain Dew and your whatever else. Come on. Because they're your kids. You may say, I mean, I got to get on Dyson sometimes. You got to go get me some more Sunkist, because, well, he don't drink it all, but Donovan does. But when they're sons and daughters, we come in and we just get whatever is the Father's. Because He says, I want to take you deeper. Last week, as we said, we heard a great message, and it was much needed. But Pastor Kevin, he shared about a quote that was used the day before from his children's pastor, and he said this. He says that your ability. Let me quote this right, because I'll probably butcher it. He says, being our best does not come natural. Being our best does not come natural. How many has abilities in here? You all got abilities? You all got abilities. But they don't come natural, do they? You have natural abilities, but you have to know how to use them natural abilities, do you not? You have to, Brother Chris, you can have the most natural ability to use that guitar and pick it up day after day. But to grow in that, to really know how to draw to that natural ability, you have to do what? You have to practice at it. You've got to learn to use that and rely on that natural ability. You've got to, first off, you've got to recognize natural ability. Then you've got to learn to walk in the natural ability. You've got to learn to trust in the natural. There's so many things that happen when it comes to going deeper in your abilities, does it not? Some of the most talented athletes in the world, playing professional sports all over the world right now, they didn't just wake up one day and say, man, I'm good. I'm just going to go play pro ball. What did they do? They worked at it. Bob, you make your girls practice, do they not? And they go, if practice is at the gym, they better be there, right? You want them to be good. They're great. I've watched them play. They're great. And there's a natural ability there, but they need to work at it to become better so that they can lean on and trust in that natural ability and grow that natural ability. To grow in their natural ability. This is something the church needs to learn. Is there's a natural ability. And when we see this, in verse 6 in Joshua, he says, back up, he says that you can have, you're going to take and lead and go in the 3 things that Joshua has to do. He says, first off, be strong. Be strong. He says, you need to be strong. I told you we were going to talk about strength today. Be strong. Now, understand this. Understand this. Strength is not the opposite of weakness, or not the absence of weakness. You can be strong and still be weak. Let me put it this way, because next is courageous. You can be courageous, but being courageous does not mean that there's an absence of fear. That does not mean that there's no fear just because you're courageous. You can be strong and still carry weakness. It's understanding where you're strong in. What is your strength in your life? Let me tell you this way. There's individuals in this room that are very confident. And I'm not talking about, their strength is being confident. I'll tell you how you know someone like that. Because they won't ask for help. When they go to do something, they just know that I can do it. I can trust in myself to do it. They're confident. I'm not talking one of these things, Joe, where you got an overcompensation, where somebody's so arrogant. You ever met somebody like that? They're very arrogant, and they come off and they try to act confident, and they know it all. And really all that is a mask for what's really going on underneath. It's a cover. But at the end of the day, somebody that's really confident and that's their strength, they just go and they do what they know they can do. Me, that's probably not my strength. I'll tell you what, definitely not, is working on cars. I know that I know, don't touch it. There's been times I've had to, but all I'm going to do is tear it up. And somebody says, oh, you know about this? Well, I've done that before, and a $10 part turned into $150 later. And I could have paid somebody to work on that, and I was trying to save money. That's the way. You don't ask me to help you, mechanic. There's no confidence in it. That's not my strength. There's those people that have a resilience. Their strength is resiliency. They can get kicked down and get back up. They don't need no help. They don't need me. I get kicked down. I need somebody to come along and help me back up. Come on, you're all right. You got this. Keep fighting. There's other people that can walk through, they get kicked down, and they just get back up like nothing happened. You ever saw somebody that just takes a beating and get a beating and get a beating, and they just go through life, and they just keep on, and they keep going, and they keep fighting, they keep slugging away? Like, how do they do that? That's a strength. And so when God tells Joshua, he says, be strong. Be strong. In other words, take your strength and use them. Take your strength and use them. It's recognizing. See, this becomes a very hard message for us, because I can't tell you what your strengths are. It takes some inner soul searching. It takes some watching yourself. It takes listening to your speech. Listen, sometimes your strengths, they become the very attack of the enemy, because he uses them. I told you this. There's some people that have the strength, they can love on the unlovable. They can walk in a room and see somebody and just they're over there by themselves, isolated. They're like Sister Mary sitting back there by herself, and and you just have the ability to walk up and say, hey, come sit with me. Come sit with me. And she's thinking, leave me alone. Okay. But honestly, there's people with that ability, right? They can walk in a room and they can just see somebody and they have the ability just to go love on them, wrap their arms around them, and be there for them when no one else will be. That's a strength. But then the Lord, He wants to magnify it, and the enemy wants to use it by hurting you, beating you, making you bitter, and building up a wall in you so that that strength of yours is not used. And when you look at people, there's an inside struggle, and you want to love them. Yet everything says I'm supposed to love them. But I've been hurt too many times. You take that confidence, and all of a sudden you start tearing things up because you get a little over. You see where I'm going with this. The enemy takes these things. You take that resilience and you go into places and do things you shouldn't do, and then you get beat up. You understand this. That when you see your strengths, you've got to recognize them. Not only so you protect them, but so you know how to walk in them. You can trust in them. As I said, my strength, not mechanicking. I don't trust in my mechanicking abilities. I don't trust in them. My strength, honestly, is not public speaking. It's not. It's probably one of my weakest things. I do not like talking in front of people. I don't. You sure do talk a lot for somebody. I heard somebody say that. Brother Chris, give me an amen. He preaching with me this morning. Because when I recognize my strengths, then I can also line up my weaknesses. But it takes for you to know your strengths first, for you to recognize your weaknesses. And when you recognize your weaknesses, then you get real with yourself, do you not? I need a little help here. As I said, I've already touched on Moses. Moses knew his weaknesses. And what did he look at the Lord and say, hey, I can't talk in front of people. I can't speak. I stutter. Right? That's what he said. I do that pretty well, don't I? I've been known to do that a time or two. Nobody ain't looking at me. Weaknesses is getting real that, hey, I'm not strong in that. When I understand that I'm not a good mechanic, then all of a sudden, then I don't go out and do extra. I don't volunteer to do it. I don't go do it on myself because I know it's a weakness. I steer away from that. Correct? I steer away from this. But see, here, Joshua, you got to recognize, has weaknesses. Just like every one of us, Joshua has weaknesses in his life. Joshua has some things that he has to work on and he needs help through. And so, in doing so, he's got to do what? He's got to lean on the Lord in them weaknesses. He's got to trust the Lord in them weaknesses. Look what Ephesians says. Ephesians 6, Paul's getting ready to write about what we wrestle against, not against principalities, spiritual weakness in high places. But look, before he ever gets there, he says, finally, be what? Be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. This word, be strong, in the Greek, it means to be filled with strength. To be filled, to be filled up, to be empowered, to be pressed in upon in the Lord. It's saying, but see, Lord, I'm preaching a lot better than you guys are paying attention this morning. One of the things that we don't get as a church, we don't get real with ourselves and says, I'm short here and I need help here. We don't get real, and so then we don't know how to practice and put into practice leaning on the Lord for these things. Look, the first time I ever preached, I remember walking in, and the youth pastor at that time, he says, next week you're preaching. Whoa, 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 whoa. I thought this was a learning experience. Oh, you're about to learn. I mean, it was that simple. I had no idea how to write a sermon. I had no idea how to preach. And I'm thinking to myself, I kind of just thought I'd come out here and I really don't know what I thought, but here it is. And it was just there on my lap, and I'm like, I've already said, Lord, I can't talk in front of people. You catch me in a big crowd, you're going to see me off in the corner. I'm not kidding. You will not see me in the midst of the crowd, and them all gathered around and said, look, 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 I'm here. You won't see me doing that. You'll see me shrink back and get behind everybody and keep my mouth shut. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be heard. I just don't do I'll talk to you all day long, one-on-one. But I will not do it in a crowd. It's not my strength. And so I remember going home and falling on my face. I mean, immediately after, Lord, I can't do this. He said, I got you where I need you. Because you understand your strength. I've shared this. One of my strengths is the ability to lead. It's just a natural, it ain't because of it's just because of who He created me to be. I just walk out and I don't know whatever. We're not going to get there. I promise you. But I'm going, so I'll get you somewhere. We'll pick this up next week if we have to. I've got a long ways to go, brother. In our strength, we recognize, then we can see our weakness. And I fell before the Lord and I began to cry out. And what I watched Him do, I walked in there, and what did I do? I just done what I knew to do and let Him move. And what had to happen is, throughout the sermons, as I grew in the Lord and trusted in the Lord, I become more and more comfortable leaning on Him and knowing when I get up here and I start speaking, all I got to do is what I hear say. I apologized Wednesday night because I got so far off my notes. And somebody said, well, you never go by your notes. And I said, no, actually, I really do. I really do. I don't need to look at them because He just tells me what's in there. And I'll go home and I may skip a few things. But for the most part, I'll hit everything in there I need to do, sometimes a little too much. And so I've watched God work. And I know how to trust in Him on that. And knowing how to trust in Him to speak through me and just be obedient to that. I know where my weakness is, and I know how to rely on Him. But it took growth. I remember a young lady, and I've shared this before, from our youth group. She graduated, and she just sends me a little thank you card for everything. And she says, in that card, she says, I really didn't think you were going to make it after that first time. What did it do? It took practice. It took training myself and recognizing where I needed to lean on the Lord, trust in the Lord. This is why I can find myself and associate with my Lord. And then when I do it, when I know that I just let the Lord have it, I'll go home and I'll be so exhausted and tired, I won't be able to talk for the next 2 or 3 hours afterwards. But I know this. I just had an encounter with God. I'll know that. I'll know when I waver between my own strength and His strength. I'll know when I rely on myself and Him. Because what happens is, when I'm just pouring myself out before Him, what's He do? He just empties me out before you. That's why I'm exhausted and wore out. But then what's He say? Then I'll renew you later. Because that's what I'm supposed to do this morning. It's understanding, though. And most of us, we do not get real with ourselves. We don't get real where we're at. We don't just look at God and say, hey, God, where am I at? Pull my strengths out. Let me see them daily. Let me see what I'm good at and where I fall short. Listen, I want you to think about this just real quick. I'm not going to go nobody's strengths today anyway. So, otherwise we may be here till next week. As a parent, I was meditating on this morning. Did you know that there's not a one of you in here that raised a kid, a 12-year-old, in the year 2021? Not a one of you. Did you? I haven't. I've got a 12-year-old in the years 2020, but it's not done. I'm still raising him in the year 2020. No one's done it. In 1970, no one raised a 10-year-old until after 1970. Are you with me? They had to grow in it to learn to become it. This is why somebody to say that oh Lord help me, that I know what you're going through and I know how to deal with it and all this, but that's not you. Because You learn how to deal with the situation. You do because you are you. And you have strengths, and somebody else can tell you how to raise your kids all day long, can they not? I wouldn't do that. How could they let them do that? And they have no clue. And it may be a weakness of yours, it could be the strength of yours. It could be the strength of yours. I'm going to tell my mom for just a moment. She's going to love me. When I was growing up, one of the strengths of my mother, and still one of her strengths, is she wears her emotion on her sleeve. She wears it. And it's a strength, and I'll tell you why. Because she will tell you where she's at. She recognizes where she's at. She understands where she's at. That's a strength. It's a strength. Now, again, like I said, you let the enemy pull that, and then it becomes a whole other thing. But at the same time, seeing that in yourself and using that to raise your kids, to live your life, to be everything that you can be. Then what happens when I get strong in the Lord? I let Him empower me with my weaknesses, but what happens to my strengths? They're magnified even greater. They're magnified even greater. My ability to love becomes greater. I may have a natural ability to love somebody, but it becomes even greater. I may have, you talked about gifts the one night, and you said yours was the ability to forgive. That when God magnifies that, your ability to forgive becomes, it's no longer just in the here and now. It goes and goes on. But it takes what? Drawn into the Lord. It takes going deeper in. It takes learning to let Him magnify that. This is where Joshua came. See, he watched Moses magnify the strength because Moses had what? His natural ability, his strength was what? The ability to stand before people and lead. Moses could get up there and come on, somebody, because he got up there and said, hey, follow me. And these people, like, where are we going to follow you? Well, we're going to go out and worship the Lord. What are you talking about? How can we worship the Lord? We're being beaten daily. We're serving a bunch of people. We're building all these things around here. We're doing everything for them. Why would I want to worship the Lord? What has He ever done for me? I mean, come on, somebody. But he said, no, come on. And they're like, all right, let's go see what this thing's all about. And they followed him out. And it took him walking in strength, but it took God magnifying it. And there was times in the wilderness, oh, did you take us out here to die? He needed, what did he do? He fell on his face and said, Father, forgive them. Bring me back to that place. I need that strength again to keep leading. Go ahead and stand up. Go ahead, guys, come on. I really do. I've got a long ways to go. But I want you to see this morning, because the Lord is dealing with me about being strong. I am not physically strong, as you see. I'm just not. I remember I've got these friends in Mansfield, and the one, he bought him a big old gun safe, Bob. And so he called all of his buddies over and he said, hey, I'll cook you dinner if you'll help me move my gun safe into where it needs to be. And so they come over to help him, and they walked in there and they look at this gun safe. And they're like, what? We can't move this thing. It's going to take 10 people. Well, his big friend, the strong friend, comes walking in. He walks over, he bears hugged his safe, he leans up, he carries it over where it needs to be, sets it down where it needs to be, and he goes, what's for dinner? You talk about a strong man. Don't ask him to wrestle, because he will. I've asked him before. Not in a good context either. He was physically strong. And he could bear some things on his back. Not everybody's physically strong. And I believe this morning, I truly believe this morning. Most of us, we've been trying to carry things that we can't carry. Can I get real with you? I want to get real for just a second. I know I have you standing, but I look around these pews, and there was a day and a time there was 80 people in here weekly. And I get disheartened when I walk out the door. I really do. I believe this wholeheartedly this morning, that God had you here for this particular message. I believe that, and I don't ever dispute that. But what I do is I take it all personal, Bob. I take it home. I take it on me. It's my job. The Lord says that ain't yours to carry. Just talking to myself this morning in this moment. It's not yours to carry. And what begins to happen, George, is I get weary then because I'm trying to carry something. I try to figure out why such and such ain't here. I try to figure out what's going on in their life, and I try to go fix and mend all the pieces, and that's not what I'm supposed to do. And he said to me, he said, it's time for you to wait on me. Watch me break through something this morning. There's some of you in here that you've been carrying things that aren't yours to carry. You've been carrying, Lord help me. You've been carrying your kids. You're trying to save them, and God's saying, I'm trying to save them, and oh Lord help me. There's some of you carry their burdens. You do everything for them. Everything. And you wonder why you're wore out. There's some of you this morning, you've been carrying the weight of your finances. I'm hearing somebody in here, you are so wore out with your financial situation right here in this moment. You don't know how the next bill's going to get paid. I don't know who I'm talking to. I've worked and I should have a surplus, but at the end of the day, I just keep giving and giving, and I should be putting towards this, and I don't have nothing to put towards this because I'm broke. I don't know who that's for. And you are wore out. There's somebody in here this morning that's wore out from trying to live a Christian life, trying to present themselves. Hey, don't kill the messenger this morning. I'm just being real. It's trying to put on a facade that everything's okay. There's somebody that is they've tried to be perfect in the eyes of people and forgot that they're perfect in the eyes of the Lord when they accept the Lord. They're weary. I just hear the Lord speaking to me in this moment. Just give me a moment here. I understand the very place you're at. I understand you're at a crossroads. There's somebody at a crossroads, don't know what decision they're going to make. This morning it says, I want to come and steal you. I want to come and quiet you. I want to come and minister to you because I want to renew your strength. Because this morning, I want to break through your situation, your circumstance, and sit you back where the direction and the path I have for you. So that when you walk, you will not grow weary. When you run, you will not faint. This morning,